Who committed this unspeakable evil was unknown for several weeks, but due to the killer's incompetence and outstanding police work by numerous local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, the person that slithered through that sliding glass door at 1122 King Road now stands before the world and this court unmasked. This unfathomable and senseless act of evil has caused immeasurable pain and loss. No parent should ever have to bury their child. This is the greatest tragedy that can be inflicted upon a person. Parents who took their children to college in a truck filled with moving boxes.
Unlock the darkest stories and unravel the mysteries with Dark Crime Box. Subscribe now and step inside the world of true crime like never before.
The house on King Road was silent in the early hours of November 13, 2022. Snow hadn't yet settled, but winter was already pressing in on Moscow, Idaho, wrapping the quiet college town in darkness. Inside that rented home near the University of Idaho campus, for young lives had been violently cut short. By the time daylight arrived, the scene would shatter a community that believed this kind of horror only happened somewhere else. Before we go any further, if you value slow burn, deeply researched true crime stories told with care and gravity, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications. It helps these stories reach the people who truly listen. The murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernadal, and Ethan Chapin sent shockwaves far beyond Idaho. The victims were students, friends, sons and daughters, people with routines, inside jokes, and futures that were supposed to stretch far beyond that weekend. Their deaths transformed an ordinary off-campus house into one of the most infamous crime scenes in modern American history. As investigators raced against fear and speculation, another name quietly entered the story: Bryan Kohberger, a criminology graduate student. A man who studied criminal behavior while allegedly becoming the subject of one of the most intense criminal investigations in the country. And today, while the legal process grinds forward, Bryan Kohberger exists in a very different world from the one he once knew. A world of locked doors, constant surveillance, and isolation. This is what his life behind bars really looks like. After his arrest in December 2022, Kohberger was placed into custody under conditions designed for someone facing extreme public scrutiny and serious charges. From the very beginning, his confinement was not ordinary. Because of the nature of the case and the national attention surrounding it, Kohberger was separated from the general jail population for his own safety. This form of isolation is not a privilege. It is a controlled environment where movement is limited, interactions are minimal, and every moment is observed. Behind bars, days lose their shape. Lights turn on and off according to schedules he does not control. Meals arrive through slots. Recreation, when permitted, happens alone. Communication is restricted, monitored, and logged. There is no privacy in the way most people understand it. Even silence is supervised. Kohberger's former life had structure too, but it was a structure he chose. Classes, research, teaching responsibilities, late nights studying criminology, the very subject that examines why crimes happen and how offenders think. That contrast is impossible to ignore. A man who once analyzed criminal cases now sits at the center of one, his own behavior dissected by the same system he studied. As the case moved forward, Kohberger remained in custody, awaiting trial. No verdict, no sentencing. Just time. Endless, repetitive time. Incarceration before conviction carries a unique psychological weight. There is no closure, no resolution, only uncertainty. Every court date becomes a marker in an otherwise monotonous existence. Every legal filing carries the possibility of hope or dread. For inmates facing high-profile charges, routine is rigid. Wake-up calls are early. Lights are harsh. The environment is intentionally stripped of comfort. Books are limited. Writing materials are controlled. Physical contact with the outside world is reduced to letters, legal visits, and carefully regulated phone calls. Even those moments come with reminders that nothing said or done is ever truly private. Midway through the story, it's important to pause and ask you to stay with us. If this case matters to you, if understanding the reality behind the headlines matters, share this video. These stories are heavy, but they deserve to be told with depth, not noise. Public fascination has followed Kohberger into custody, but behind bars there is no audience. There is no debate panel. There is only routine, surveillance, and isolation. Jail officials have confirmed that inmates in cases like this are often monitored closely due to safety risks, potential self-harm concerns, and the likelihood of retaliation from other inmates. That reality shapes every aspect of daily life. There are no mirrors of freedom inside those walls. Time stretches. Minutes feel longer. Days blur together. Legal documents become the most important objects in the room. They are read, reread, annotated, and memorized. The future depends on them. Yet outside the jail, the community of Moscow continues to live with the aftermath. Students returned to campus under heavier security. Families tried to grieve while cameras lingered. And a nation watched as one man's life became defined not by what he claimed, but by what the evidence might prove. Behind bars, Bryan Kohberger waits. He waits as evidence is argued. He waits as narratives form. He waits as 4 names are spoken again and again, reminding everyone why this case exists at all. And as we close this first chapter, remember this: incarceration is not just about physical confinement. It is about psychological pressure, isolation, and the slow erosion of certainty. This is only the beginning of what life behind bars means in a case like this. If you're still here, stay with Dark Crime Box. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter, because what led Bryan Kohberger to this cell and what may come next is even darker. Before the headlines, before the patrol cars and press conferences, life on King Road moved the way college life always does. Fast, loud, and full of small moments that feel permanent when you're living them. The house sat just off campus, a familiar place to friends, a hub of laughter, late nights, and plans that stretched into a future none of them believed could be taken so suddenly. If you're watching Dark Crime Box for depth, not noise, take a second to support the channel. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. These stories only work when they're told carefully, and when people stay to listen. Kaylee Goncalves was nearing a turning point in her life. She was close to graduating, talking about moving on, about independence and new beginnings. Friends described her as vibrant and outgoing, someone who filled rooms with energy. Madison Mogan was her closest friend, steady and social, deeply woven into Kaylee's everyday life. They were inseparable in the way only long friendships can be, sharing routines, secrets, and the belief that the world was opening up for them. Xana Kernodle lived in the same house, balancing school with work, trying to hold together the pressures that come with young adulthood. She was described as kind, resilient, and devoted to the people she cared about. Her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, didn't live there, but that night he was with her. A student athlete, known for his warmth and easy presence, Ethan represented the kind of normalcy that feels untouchable until it isn't. These weren't symbols. They weren't headlines. They were people with schedules, habits, and plans for the following week. Their lives intersected inside that house, a place that felt safe because it always had been. At the same time, miles away, Bryan Kohberger was living a very different kind of life. He had recently moved to Washington State to pursue a PhD in criminology at Washington State University. On paper, his path looked focused and deliberate. Advanced education, academic ambition, a deep interest in criminal behavior, policing, and the psychology of offenders. To classmates and acquaintances, Kohberger was often described as quiet, intense, sometimes awkward. He wasn't someone who blended easily into social circles. Some recalled him as serious to the point of discomfort, deeply analytical and rigid in his thinking. Others barely noticed him at all. In many ways, he existed on the edges of the spaces he occupied. What stands out looking back is the contrast. On one side, a house filled with young people moving freely through life, anchored by friendship and routine. On the other, a man studying crime and theory, dissecting cases from a distance, immersing himself in the mechanics of violence without ever being close to it, at least not publicly. There is no verified evidence that Bryan Kohberger personally knew the victims. No confirmed relationship. No documented connection that places him inside their social circle. And yet, as investigators would later argue, paths do not need to cross directly for obsession or fixation to form. That idea remains part of the broader discussion surrounding this case, though motives have not been definitively established. As Kohberger settled into his new environment, his daily life revolved around academic demands, research, coursework, teaching responsibilities. He reportedly spent long hours focused on criminology, the same subject that examines how crimes unfold and how offenders behave before and after violence. The irony of that reality would later become impossible to ignore. In the middle of this story, it's important to slow down. True crime often rushes past the victims to focus on the accused. But the loss here began with 4 lives that mattered deeply to the people who knew them. Their absence left empty rooms, unanswered messages, and families forced to redefine their lives overnight. While the victim's world was full of connection, Kohberger's appeared increasingly solitary. That doesn't mean isolation equals guilt, but it does paint a picture of 2 realities existing at the same time, one grounded in shared experience, the other defined by internal focus and distance. Investigators would later look closely at Kohberger's background, his movements, his habits, searching for patterns that could explain how such a crime could happen. At this stage in the story, though, none of that was visible to the outside world. To most people, he was just another graduate student, another face in a lecture hall. And that's what makes this chapter so unsettling. Tragedy does not announce itself. It builds quietly, in parallel lives moving closer without anyone realizing it. Normal nights, normal routines, normal assumptions about safety. Halfway through this chapter, if you're finding value in this careful approach, help Dark Crime Box grow. Share this video, leave a comment, and stay engaged. These stories deserve patience, not shortcuts. As the semester moved on, the house on King Road remained what it had always been, a place where friends came and went freely. There were no alarms, no sense of danger looming in the background. The comfort of familiarity is powerful, especially in a small college town where people feel connected by proximity and routine. Meanwhile, Kohberger's life continued under the surface, defined by structure and internal pressure. Academic performance, expectations, self-image. None of these are crimes. But in hindsight, investigators would question whether something unseen was taking shape during this time. This chapter isn't about accusation. It's about contrast. For young adults surrounded by friendship and plans, and one man immersed in the study of crime, living a life largely disconnected from those around him. 2 worlds moving forward, unaware they were approaching the same moment. Because what happens next doesn't begin with violence. It begins with warning signs, patterns, behaviors, and red flags that only become clear after everything has already gone wrong. In the next chapter, we'll explore those early signals. The details investigators believe may have mattered. The moments that felt insignificant at the time, but may have been the quiet steps toward disaster. If you want to keep following this story in depth, support Dark Crime Box by liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And as we move forward, ask yourself this haunting question. How many warning signs go unnoticed simply because we don't know where to look? The warning signs in this case did not arrive with sirens. They appeared quietly, scattered across routine movements and digital traces that only gained meaning after the violence had already occurred. Investigators would later focus on patterns, late-night drives, repeated phone pings near King Road, and a cell phone that appeared to go dark during the critical hours. None of these details alone told a story. Together, they began to form one. If you're finding value in this slow, careful breakdown, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. These stories rely on patience, not sensationalism. On the night of the murders, the house followed its usual rhythm. Friends returned home after a night out. Doors were locked. Lights went off. There was no immediate sign that anything was wrong. But by the next morning, concern turned into panic, and panic into horror. The discovery of the victims revealed a level of violence that stunned even experienced investigators. This was not a crime of impulse. It appeared targeted, controlled, and devastatingly personal. As law enforcement moved in, the investigation expanded rapidly. Surveillance footage from nearby neighborhoods showed a white Hyundai Elantra repeatedly circling the area. Digital data placed a phone linked to Bryan Kohberger moving in ways investigators found significant. DNA recovered from a knife sheath left at the scene became a critical piece of evidence. Each element added weight, tightening the focus on one suspect. Authorities allege that after the crime, Kohberger attempted to resume normal life. Classes continued. Daily routines resumed. But behind the scenes, the investigation was accelerating. When the arrest finally came, it crossed state lines and marked the end of anonymity for a man now facing some of the most serious charges in the American justice system. Behind bars, Kohberger's world narrowed instantly. Isolation replaced independence. Routine replaced choice. For high-profile inmates, incarceration is a constant psychological test. Every movement is tracked. Every interaction monitored. Time becomes both punishment and pressure. There is no escape from the weight of accusation or the knowledge that the outcome may define the rest of one's life. Outside those walls, the impact rippled outward. Families were left to grieve under public scrutiny. A college town struggled to reclaim a sense of safety. Students returned to classrooms carrying fear alongside their backpacks. Memorials appeared where laughter once lived. The absence of 4 young people became impossible to ignore. In the middle of the story, pause with us. If you believe these victims deserve to be remembered with care and seriousness, share this video. True crime should never forget the human cost. As the legal process continues, the case remains unresolved in the courtroom. Kohberger, presumed innocent under the law, remains confined, waiting as evidence is debated and timelines are scrutinized. His life behind bars is defined by uncertainty. No verdict, no closure, only the slow passage of days measured by court dates and legal filings. This story is not just about guilt or innocence. It is about how ordinary lives intersect with unimaginable violence, about how warning signs often become visible only in hindsight, and about how one night can fracture dozens of futures at once. As we reach the end, remember this: justice is a process, not a moment. And behind every headline is a silence left behind. Empty rooms, unanswered messages, and questions that may never fully be resolved. If you want to continue exploring these stories with depth and respect, support Dark Crime Box by liking, subscribing, sharing, and turning on notifications. And leave your thoughts below, because the question that lingers long after the facts are presented is this: do we ever truly see the danger coming? Or do we only recognize it once everything is already lost?